Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Yu. Thanks for coming back to the Law and Crime Trial Network. We've been following along day 27 of the Commonwealth's case against Karen Reed. The 44-year-old is charged with second-degree murder, motor vehicle manslaughter, and leaving the scene of a crime. This all in relation to the death of her Boston police officer boyfriend, 46-year-old John O'Keefe. Prosecutors believe that Reed hit O'Keefe while her SUV and she was drunk. Today, voicemails that the defendant left O'Keefe the morning of his death were played for the jury. So let's listen to some of those early calls she made to O'Keefe after turning in for the night.
John, I'm here with your kid. Nobody knows what the you want, pervert. Yeah, it's 1 in the morning. I'm with your niece and nephew. You pervert. You're a pervert. John, I'm going home. I cannot babysit your niece. I need to go home. You are using me right now. You're another girl. She's sleeping next to me. You're a loser. Yourself.
And there's a clear shift in Reed's tone the next morning when O'Keefe still didn't arrive home. Take a listen.
I don't want that.
Definitely some new details that we need to talk about, and joining me and trial attorney Robin Nunn to break this down is licensed clinical social worker and trauma expert Sherry Botwin. Sherry, thank you for being here. We hear a change of tone in Karen Reed from the voicemails that she left O'Keefe the night to the morning after here. What do you make of all of that, Sherry?
You know what I'm thinking when I listen to the messages from earlier in the night? She's hysterical. She's saying accusations towards him. She's seeming very, very angry. And then there's a shift in her tone. And again, for me as a therapist, when I'm watching this trial and listening more to the evidence and the things that she was texting and the voicemails, to me, again, it all lines up with this is a deeply disturbed woman who I believe is dealing with or demonstrating signs of borderline personality disorder.
Oh, well, I would love for you to dive in on that because here we are talking about the way she looks at people, the smirks. I talked about that in the previous hour. We've also been seeing a lot of her personality shine through during this whole trial when a certain witness comes onto the stand, from talking to the press also to talking to the gallery and making interesting facial expressions. What are your thoughts on the way she's been conducting herself?
I don't think she's conducting herself well at all, in the sense that when somebody has borderline personality disorder, they can be very different in how they act according to who's in front of them. So for instance, what we're seeing is in the courtroom, there's a lot of glaring. At times she's smiling and laughing. And like you said, depending on who's taking the stand, a trait with someone who's borderline is there's a lot of manipulation, and there's also a lot of black and white types of thinking. So I don't talk to her. I don't know her, but I can kind of tell just from watching her in the courtroom, when her attorneys are standing up and speaking on her behalf, she's very engaged. At times she's nodding her head. Then when the Commonwealth takes to the stand and starts questioning their witnesses, she becomes almost like seething. Her eyes and her face is, to me, it appears to be very angry. So there's a lot of black and white in the sense that when somebody is borderline, they're either all for that person, this person is great, this person is helping me, or they will emulate feelings of hatred and disgust. So when you're someone with borderline personality disorder, I don't think she's aware of how she's coming across as she's sitting in the courtroom. But I feel like intuitively that these jury members, and again, we don't see their faces, but I think that they're probably watching her a lot. And even if they don't understand all of this evidence and testimony, she's not really coming across as a likable woman who's apparently grieving for her boyfriend. I have to remind myself over and over, her boyfriend is dead. She's being accused of killing this man. This is not a woman that seems to be sad about the loss of her boyfriend.
Great point there, Sherry. And Robin, the top charge here is second-degree murder, which implies intent. But if the defendant was as drunk as the police are saying that night, on top of these voicemails where she genuinely doesn't seem to know where O'Keefe is, how can they prove intent? I mean, if they fail to prove intent in the jury's eyes, do you expect to see a conviction on the charge of vehicular manslaughter?
Yeah, I think they're definitely going to really struggle here. I have not seen anything that, evidences that there is any sort of gross negligence or there has been any intent. In fact, most of the evidence presented has been the opposite of that she, couldn't possibly have had developed any sort of awareness in order to premeditate this murder. So I think they're going to have a really, really tough time. Now, the vehicular manslaughter, I'm charged. I mean, that is possible. Obviously, there are going to be testimony, and there has been testimony that there is some evidence that there was some a collision with the victim and her car. If that were to stand and sway the jury, I think that that's a possible charge. But I think the real second-degree murder charge, the one that they're really going after, that the Commonwealth is looking for, I just don't think there's any evidence of that. And I think, in fact, the defense is going to come back before they present their side of the case and ask for a finding of not guilty, because there hasn't been evidence of intent in this case.
Well, Robin, the previous hour, you were here, you were listening to Matt Mangino, our other guest. I asked if Karen Read was going to testify, because she said, I don't know. Do you think she's going to testify?
I think there is absolutely no way that she is going to testify. I think her defense counsel is going to rightly encourage her to not take the stand. It is the prosecutor's burden here. They have to prove this second-degree murder. They have to prove intent. All signs are showing that they have not yet met that burden. The case, they're saying they haven't rested yet, so there's still time. But her taking the stand really puts her at risk. Even if she is not guilty, there could be questions, there could be things that are said. We've already sort of discussed that her body language and her mannerisms are not one of a grieving ex-girlfriend, and a juror could misconstrue that and conclude that to mean that she actually did, in fact, murder the victim here. And so it would be best, and I think most attorneys that I know would advise her not to take the stand, and she has indicated that she will follow her counsel's advice. So I don't think there's any shot that she's taking the stand here.
From an emotional aspect already, I think her taking the stand could be a dicey situation for her.